Hi, and welcome to the Track Bar, Nessun Fuel's weekly NASCAR show. My name is Ben Watanabe, joined by Mike Cole, and we are the only weekly NASCAR show that I know of that received more dislikes than likes on YouTube in its debut episode.
The internet.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
You know, but in the spirit of Kyle Busch, yeah, being hated generates controversy. Controversy generates ratings. So
I mean, at least if in order to click the thumbs down, you have to watch.
We're going straight to the top, basically. All right, so we're coming off Memorial Day weekend. Let's just start off right now. What was the best part of your Memorial Day weekend?
There wasn't a whole lot of good stuff. The weather stunk.
That was very bad.
Which kind of set up. Do you want to know just in general? Or
no, I mean in general.
Oh wait,
we got all
no, I know, yeah.
Racing.
My fiance and I painted a bench, so that was fun.
That's
so
lovely.
we got some things done around the house, but no, I'm really bummed out about this Memorial Day weekend. The weather stunk, and I'm not feeling that vibe going into summer right now. It doesn't look like summer's ever going to get here, so that depresses me greatly. So I'm a little down in the dumps.
What color did you paint the bench?
White.
Just plain white
eggshell? I mean, we didn't even, I mean, it was like we repainted it. It was wicker. It took us like 15 minutes. It's really not, but like that's how,
I tell you what,
my weekend was.
That's, I took the kids to Chick-fil-A.
Oh, I also had Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, there you go.
Monday, so
there you go. So Chick-fil-A,
I
if you want to sponsor a show that a lot of people hate, or I mean, like.
Well, that's
three people hate.
We're already down a bad hole here because in my other show, the highly popular, critically acclaimed Nessun Around video podcast, which can be seen weekly on Nessun.com with my friend Ricky Doyle, we don't like to give away plugs like that. You got to pay for that kind of stuff, so we're off to a tough start.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. All right, well, after our down Memorial Day weekend, some fun stuff happened, at least over the weekend. We had the coca-cola 600. Yeah, we had the Indy 500. We had something in F1. We're not going to talk about F1. Before we get started with all that, I'll just run through some quick news and notes. It seems like that's what people do on shows, so I'll just get a rundown. The late-breaking news. Loose lug nut, Kevin Harvick, he got fined $10,000. That's all that happened.
What a sport.
Yeah. Big news. The big news, though. Great Clips is ending its relationship with Casey Kane and Hendrick Motorsports effective at the end of the 2017 season. It's obviously it's a black day for chain haircut.
Yeah, pour one out.
Shops everywhere. Give me a thought on sponsors. How's that for just throwing you out there?
I'd like a few. If anybody's interested in sponsoring this great show, I would stop listening now as I badmouth sponsors. They're whatever. It's actually, no, in all seriousness, it's like one of my favorite parts about NASCAR. It's like probably the reason I got into NASCAR or was attracted to it as a child because, there's all these different companies and their colors on cars and stuff. Like, the idea of driving billboards is wild. That being said, a lot of this forewarned in this episode of like, man, back in the day. But like back in the day, sponsorships were so much cooler. Like the whole, I mean, most teams have primary sponsors and things like that you see for most of the year. But like when it starts bouncing around and stuff, that's when it confuses the hell out of me. Like when I started, I get used to Kyle Larson driving the Target car every week, and he's driving like the what was it? I don't even remember.
Century First Bank or something. Right,
like that. Or something weird like that. And you see it's like a blue car, then I get confused. But in general, I think it's like one of the more interesting NASCAR tropes, cliches, whatever. Like, I thought that Talladega Nights kind of hit it on the head too. Like that kind of culture, I think it's interesting. It interests me.
You're absolutely right though, because I was looking today. Like it used to be, like remember like the cornflakes car? It actually looked like a box of cornflakes.
Right. Yeah.
And like the Miller High Life car, like it actually looked like a Miller High Life. And now it seems like the cars are just like these generic cars that they slap a logo on the front, on the hood of it. It's like that's not really the same. That's not as cool as like the Frosted Flakes car that had like tiger stripes, which is kind of corny. But it's
corny. The Tide car looked like a bottle of detergent. Sure. It was a driving
ridiculous.
Bottle of detergent. It was great.
Yeah. So I don't know. Back in the day, though, you saw the number 3 in victory lane a lot.
Quite frequently.
And that car is now back in victory lane, or at least it was on Sunday. Austin Dillon winning the Coca-Cola 600 with Jimmy Johnson running out of fuel in the final laps. There's a couple things to get here in regards to this race. First off, how do you feel about fuel mileage races?
This might be a hot take. I don't mind them.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I like them. It's not something I want to see every week.
Yep.
But there is an element of strategy involved.
Completely agree.
There is. Researching for this episode, I was kind of looking up stuff on fuel mileage races and just what people have said about it in the past. And I found a story from 2011, maybe before a Loudon race. Actually, okay. I think that Tony Stewart might end up winning. About like embracing fuel mileage races and things like that. And I thought the one point that I forget who wrote it, but it was on ESPN.com. Just like, and one thing that stood out to me, and I agree with this wholeheartly, is there's an element of unpredictability. So like the worst thing that can happen, I think, in a NASCAR race is predictability. And like, those are the worst afternoons, right? When it's just within like 100 laps or whatever. It's like, oh, well, I don't need to watch the rest of this race because unless something crazy happens, and it's probably not going to, I know who's going to win this race. Somebody clearly has the best car. They're at a track where you can't pass, something like that. Those are the worst weekends. So
such as last weekend in
Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that at least gave us a break from the monotony that was last week. Like it's a real A/B testing type of thing where we could see the difference between the 2 weeks. So. And the end of that race was very interesting, very entertaining. So in that regard, I like them.
Yeah, and when people ask me like, how can you like NASCAR more than other racing series? Sunday is a great example because you had, Monaco. It's a one-stop race.
Yeah,
they race they 78 laps or whatever, and they make one pit stop that lasts 3 seconds. And there's obviously other strategy there. It takes a lot of skill to drive around that track. IndyCar though, is the same way. It's over racing, but fuel almost never comes up there. And to me, it's after those two huge races, what's gonna get you up to watch 600 more miles of racing? And it's got to be it's because there's something different there. There's different types of strategy, and fuel mileage is one of them. I'm with you. I don't hate the fuel mileage game as long as it's not happening every week.
Right, and I thought one thing and this will come up a lot more over the course of doing this show. One thing, especially somebody who hasn't followed NASCAR my entire life, doesn't follow it as religiously as a lot of people. Maybe that's why we're getting so many thumbs down. Jeez,
sorry guys.
That's like I think that should be like the point of our show. Is I'm the dummy, but. I learn something every week watching NASCAR, and that's something that I don't necessarily do in other sports because I've got the basics and even the secondary and even tertiary, basics and fundamentals and strategy. But with NASCAR, I'm learning something every week, and like the last however many laps of last week, once fuel mileage started getting discussed, it's like now you're really getting into like the nuts and bolts of things in terms of whether it's strategy from the crew chief or the thing that really interests me and with the technology we have now is where you can see who's guys on the throttle, guys getting in the brake, like the actual strategy of driving a car when you're trying to conserve fuel is something that fascinates me too. So it's little things like that you can kind of pick up on even in a fuel mileage.
But it's not just you, and it's not necessarily not being dumb, because I mean, how many times during a race will Darrell Waltrip say something and Jeff Gordon will about like the way they used to do it in the 80s, and Jeff Gordon will go, like I didn't know, or Larry McReynolds will say something, and the one of the announcers, these guys that have championships, they'll say, I never knew that before, like I didn't know you could do that with the fuel pump. It's I don't know, that's why it's fascinating sport.
A pick and roll is a pick and roll, but like we're talking about intricate cars here and different strategies. There's a lot to dig into.
Big time. Last time, the number 3 was in victory lane. Obviously, I mean, I guess I don't want to insult anyone by saying who it was last time, but I guess for the new among us, Dale Sr.
I knew that.
The last guy. I realized it was 17 years ago, so that's kind of sad to think that was 17 years ago. A lot of hot takes on the interwebs from a lot of fans on Ty Dillon Austin Dillon.
Austin.
Being in the number 3.
That's another thumbs down.
Exactly. Being in the number 3, there's a lot of ways for me to go with the Austin Dillon question and whether he's worthy of the number 3. I'll just come out and be honest. Second, third, fourth generation drivers, they're not my favorite. Mm-hmm. It's not that I dislike him and Blaney and Earnhardt and all these guys that their dads were big time racers, a lot of them at the Cup level. I just have a great respect for guys that are breaking the mold in a way. And I know a lot of times you've got guys who I know Logano, his dad obviously is sponsored a lot of it, helped them through. You can't race if you don't have a good support system, a good financial support system. But if you're the grandson of one of the richest owners in the sport, you're not going to be my favorite driver. Yeah. I might not actively root for you, but I like the underdog. So that's kind of my main thought on Dillon. As far as him being worthy of the 3, I also understand where some people's frustrations are coming from, because when Earnhardt met his end, there was a feeling that the 3 won't be driven again. And I know that it was said it won't be driven again but for family. I think a lot of people assumed that what he meant there was an Earnhardt, not for a member of the ownership family. So I don't know. I think you were also more of an Earnhardt fan when you were a kid than I was. I was never an Earnhardt fan as a child either. What is it like watching someone in that car? It's black and red again.
Right. I honestly wasn't that big of a Dale Earnhardt fan. I like Junior more than I like his old man. Okay. But that's more because I was, when Dale died, I was still kind of just getting into the sport as opposed to being a big fan growing up. So, I guess that probably affects my opinion as well. It doesn't bother me as much as maybe it should, or as much as the internet tells me it should, as much as the media or who the fans say. I don't know. It's not that I have anything against Dillon. I just, in hindsight especially, like the idea of nobody ever driving it again. And I understand that, these things are cyclical, especially when you're primarily dealing with a finite set of numbers. It's just math. But if you're going to make one exception, I think that's the guy you make it for, especially considering the circumstances surrounding his exit from the sport. Mm-hmm. But that cat's out of the bag. The toothpaste is out of the tube. So Dillon is who he is. I don't particularly enjoy him, but I don't really care either. Yeah. He's kind of. And that's kind of one of the things about winning this week kind of illustrates that. It's like when you sit back and say, well, this guy hasn't done a whole lot in terms of winning races, so it hasn't really been on my radar that much. There is something weird and unsettling about a guy who drives the same car, once driven by the Intimidator, getting out and doing the dab on the start-finish line after winning a race. So that is quite the juxtaposition over the course of time. So I don't have a whole lot of fans. I don't have a whole lot of opinion on it. It is what it is. Like I said, if I was making decisions, if I was making the call, the 3 would have never come back. But like I said, it has, and that decision itself is what I have more of an issue with than who's actually driving. If that makes sense. Yeah, and I know a lot of the scuttlebutt on Twitter and all that is, well, this guy isn't worthy of driving the 3. It's like, well, this is his first one. It's got to start somewhere. And it's got to start somewhere. And if that's your take on it, if you're that big of an Earnhardt guy, you're probably never going to find anybody who's worthy of driving that car other than maybe Junior. Right. So,
yep. Hey, they drive the 43, they drive the 21, they drive the 18, they drive the 3. It's just it's fact of life in NASCAR. Another guy who raised a lot of hackles. Earnhardt was never afraid of not saying the right thing. Yeah. Kyle Busch's little tantrum in the press conference, and I think that's really the only thing to call it.
Being nice.
Kyle Busch's outbursts, are they good for this sport? Are they bad for this sport?
I don't know. I tend to think they're good for it, just because I think the sport's at a point right now where personalities are more important than maybe they've ever been. Because I don't know, it feels too vanilla far too often for me. We've talked about this in the past. I think it was something that, it was a conversation that was had when, Junior announced that he was retiring. It's like, we talked about it even a little bit last week, ushering into that new era. There's not a lot of guys who are, there's a lot of guys who are quite literally going to stay in their lane. And it's sometimes rocking the boat's good. I thought, Dale Jr. said, a couple of tweets said, don't change Kyle Busch. The sports need personalities, all types. Then somebody was like, well, he was being rude, which is 100% true. And that's the issue I have with it. It's like, it's one thing to be a personality. It's another thing to be a jerk. And I thought he was a jerk. But even then, Junior quote tweeted somebody responding to that saying, we can't all be politically correct robots. If you don't like them, that's perfectly fine. But that ish was funny. I was entertained. And I think that's the most important point is like, it's good if you don't like him.
Yes.
That's good. It's a personality-driven sport when it's at its best. It's a sport that's driven by fandom, like more so than any other, I think. Like that's the one thing when you get into the sport is pick a driver and follow him. If this is a guy who, pisses you off because he beats your driver and then he acts like a child, that's only going to make you want to watch next week to see if your guy's going to beat Kyle Busch. So I think it's good for the sport ultimately. I just wish he wasn't such a dip, It's just he acts like a 6-year-old and that's embarrassing for him, but that's his problem.
Right. I think Earnhardt brings up a good point, but it's both. I reserve the right, or a fan reserves the right to dislike him, but it's also great for the sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many people have been fueled over the years by a dislike of Earnhardt, Tony Stewart, Joey Logano.
Right.
It keeps me tuning in.
Yeah, exactly.
And when they win, I'm like, oh man. But when they lose, it's like, all right, good. It was somebody other than those guys this week.
Well, the fact that Kyle Busch couldn't get to the front, ran out of time.
Yeah.
That made me happy. I enjoyed that. So I was rooting against stuff. Also, talking about Junior in the Kyle Busch thing, the tweet that he had, go seek that tweet out. Kyle Busch talking about nothing surprises him, and then Junior tweets out, nothing surprises Kyle Busch except his own 2 feet.
Oh, it's
and the
great.
video of Busch tripping over his own 2 feet.
He falls over. Someone tries to help him.
Oh, legitimately fell over. So that was, at least we got that out of it. But yeah, in a way, it works. It definitely works. It's good for the sport.
Brad Keselowski didn't like it.
No.
Yeah, he agreed with you. He thought it was rude.
Yeah.
Do we have those tweets that we can throw up on the board? In the
there we go.
There we go. Yeah. So Fox sent out a tweet that said
it was the video.
I'm not quite sure the text of the tweet really captured it, but they sent out the video of Busch with his throwing the mic, literally dropping the mic. Brad Keselowski said, I'm not sure how or when hating losing got defined in this manner, but I'm pretty sure it's the wrong way. And then he followed that up with saying, IDK, my BFF Jill, but I should keep my mouth shut. Maybe I should keep my mouth shut, but I was taught to hate losing by working harder next time. And then he also mentioned not being disrespectful to others. Right. And then the director of Toyota Racing Development, which I thought coming in hot. I agree with Keselowski, you should have kept your mouth shut. This is the beauty of social media, is that you say something and it could be seen by a fan, it could be seen by a fellow driver, it could be seen by an executive in Toyota who could come back at you and I don't know if I was a executive in a major company, I don't know if I'd want that to be my look, but heck, this is racing.
Hey, you might as well team strong. Everybody's I guess that's the company line. Toyota, which is not something you're necessarily looking for. Good for Brad Keselowski. I don't know. I was rude. Call him out for being rude. It's if there's anybody who knows about it, probably Keselowski. So, it was quite the little tiff.
We're not the only ones that are entertained by it either. You can check out Ness and Fuel on his YouTube page because we talked to Ryan Blaney in New Hampshire earlier today, and he said he thought it was hilarious. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different than getting out of a car and throwing hands on.
It's not quite
but it's something. It's 2017. It is what it is.
Yeah, this is the new feud. Is
Yeah. Hey, it works.
Yeah, it works. It also works in the year 2017 is the 101st Indianapolis 500. We previewed it, so I figured we should say a couple words about it. Fernando Alonso blew an engine. Takuma Sato won. I watched this whole thing. I thought it was a great race. Did you have any takeaways?
I fell asleep. Not because of that. Because I was too tired from painting the bench, and I was probably high on fumes. The Dixon crash was
insane.
That's motorsports right there. It's I mean, there's, I don't know, what is the proper etiquette on crashes? Is it okay, like in 2017, to like crashes? I still like crashes.
I think that's why a lot of people like auto racing.
Right, I guess. I just feel like we've become more distinguished as a society, where it's like people look down on you for being entertained by simple things like crashes. But the guy has to walk away from it, and he did walk away from it. Unbelievable crash. Like, one of the most underrated parts about the whole thing was, like, he almost fell on top of Castro Neves, which would have been devastating. Yes. That would have been horrible. But it is a testament to the safety of these cars I mean, gee,
they miss them. So it's like incredible. Like 6 inches, sometimes even half an inch, one way or the other. It's like we're talking about someone being decapitated.
And just like the fact that like he's flying through the air basically in his cockpit, like the car is broken except for the one little module that he's in, and he survives it. Is incredible. Like, so I thought that's something that certainly stood out, which is a simpleton thing on my part. But the last 10 laps. Great stuff, and great story as well. I think it's something that, at least I would imagine, IndyCar is hoping kind of helps grow the sport in terms of a little more diversity in terms of its drivers. But no, for Soto to be to pass Castro Neves with what was 5 laps left, and then to hold off a guy who's literally chasing you and history is a pretty cool storyline. So
yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I think one of the cool things that not that after we just finished saying that controversy is great and it's that's how you build your sport. I also thought it was cool to see afterwards the other drivers excited for each other. Like, drivers are excited for Alonso to get that experience. Alonso is excited for Sato, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was really neat. I think that when you have an event like the Indy 500, I mean that sort of thing is palpable. My question, Mike, is how does IndyCar bottle this now? I mean, now they go to Detroit, and I know obviously they hold these races as soon as they can afterwards because they want people they want to ride that wave of people being excited. We saw TV ratings were down, although I mean TV ratings are down for everything because of TV, not necessarily because of auto racing. But I just wonder if IndyCar will ever find a way to translate the excitement and the attendance and all that kind of stuff that's generated from the Indy 500 into the rest of the season. I don't know if there is a way. I don't know if you can get worked up over Long Beach or whatever, the way that you can over the greatest spectacle in racing. But I wish that there was a way to make people more appreciative of a really cool racing series.
Yeah, luckily my job is to make stuff on the internet, so I don't really have to worry about finding those answers, and I'm glad because it seems very difficult. Yeah. One thing I did stumble across here from thedrive.com, IndyCar saw a net increase of 102,000 social media followers over the course of the last 19 days. 102,000 over its, I think it was Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. It's an 11.3 increase previous. That's on top of a 4.1 increase over a 6-week period. The thing with social media numbers is, if you go back to March 19th, 16.5%. Who knows if that's going to stand? Maybe that's just people kind of.
Twice as many people in Spain watch the Indy 500 as they watch the Monaco.
And I think that's one of the things is you're going to have to start to try to cultivate that within different cultures, different countries even. That's one thing we have to make headways in, especially with the Japanese driver winning, kind of use that as a jumping off point. And I'm not even really sure how you do that. But I mean, even the social media numbers, it's like, what exactly does this mean? I don't really know. So it's a long road. The only thing I would do, the only thing I can think of is like continue to make the Indy 500 as big as humanly possible. Kind of like NASCAR does with Daytona, where it's like, and I mean, they do that. Like, it's clearly like, I mean, geez, you watch the pre-race festivities. This is the biggest thing in the world. But like, I don't know if it's in terms of getting marketing out there a little bit earlier. Just really, and then condense everything and kind of do everything around Indy before and after the race. Use it as a jumping off point. But I don't really know how you do that. Maybe it's just one of those things where, anything you get is gravy at this point. I don't know.
To me, I think they also need to play up what the drivers, especially drivers who have raced in F1 and other series, say. I mean, because Sato is an ex F1 guy. Alonso is obviously an F1. There's a lot of guys who have been in F1, and to a man, they all say they don't necessarily come out and say that they like the Indy cars better, but they say that because it's it's an internal combustion engine, because of the way it's set up, there's fewer electronics and stuff. They say it's a raw experience. It's more of a pure racing experience. And I think that it's if you can get that message out to people, I feel like there is. Listen, Monaco is a heck of a course. It's a pain in the butt. Whenever I would play racing video games, I would never want to do it because it's so annoying with all of its turns. But let's be honest. I mean, most of the people that are in Monaco are not there to watch the race. They're there to be on their yacht. They're there to be seen. Whereas, IndyCar, obviously all 300,000 people or whatever that are at the speedway are there to get their, lubed up as well. But
they where Monaco has the yachts, Indy has the RVs.
That's true, yeah. But it is a little bit of a pure experience, and the fact that Sato, Alonso, and all these guys have said that after racing F1, I think it really it speaks to the series.
I think you just see and I think that's a good idea because like the Alonso storyline was the biggest one going into the race, and it was if it wasn't for the Dixon crash and Sato winning, it'd be one of the bigger ones coming out too. So I don't think that's a coincidence. So.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about in Indy?
No, I did. We talked about Monaco a little bit. I watched it and it stinks.
It was another scary crash though. The guy was against.
Yeah, that was wild.
I was like, oh my god, it's his headlight.
That was incredible.
Smushed.
It was great for like 3 laps. Like, oh, it looks nice there, and then it's just I don't know how people. I mean, I get how I understand it. It is what it is. It's much more techy and like. Motorhead. I get whatever. Like gearheads, fine. There's that part of it, but it's tough to watch.
It is, and it's midway through the race. There's the pit stop, and it's so exciting. Who's gonna win? And then pulled out like that could be the move that decides this race right now. And you look, and it's like there's still like 24 laps to go.
Yeah.
Like, well, what am I supposed to do for that?
Right. That was the thing. Yeah. With like 20 laps left, like, oh, the race is done. No, the cranes are cool though, kind of like Mario Kart. So that was interesting. But no, Indy was awesome. Pre-race stuff is so cool. We gotta go. Let's bring track bar going to Indy next year.
It's a great idea. Great idea. Let's make it happen.
Carb day.
All right. So I want to finish up with something new.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a lot of new stuff.
I mean, this.
it's second show. What do you expect?
So you get the thumbs up.
3 wide. We're going to ask 3 random questions. You like that?
That was,
We're going to ask 3 random questions. This week I came up with 2 of them, and then Andre, who is our leading man in the booth, in the control room, he's going to come in with a 3rd random question that neither Mike nor I know. It can be vaguely connected to the other stuff we've talked about in the show or not. I don't know. He can do whatever he wants. But those will be our 3 hot questions. So first off, going back to Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt and Austin Dillon and all that stuff, name a hateable driver that you actually kind of like.
Well, I grew up a Jeff Gordon fan, so that was the OG in terms of hateable drivers that I enjoyed. We already talked about him today. Brad Keselowski.
Oh, you stole it, man.
I think Brad Keselowski has grown up a little bit over the last few years. I think he's matured a little bit. I think. At least the way he's smarter the way he handles himself. Or this is a brilliant strategy. Just go after Kyle Busch and you're going to look like the bigger man every time. Great call on his point. It's more like for me, it's like Logano's a dink, in my opinion. So is Busch. I'm starting to realize Truex has a little bit to that. So it's like, it's not necessarily, I guess, Keselowski moving up. It's just everybody else moving down on the likability meter.
He's no longer last.
I also, and again, I said earlier, we don't like to give away free advertisement, but I love Miller Lite. So, it is what it is.
I gotta be honest. I was in the store last weekend, and I'm a Miller Lite adherent. But I walked by those Budweiser cans that just say America.
Yeah.
For a second, I was like, I'm gonna get, and then at the end, I was like, oh, I'm not. But it's great marketing by Budweiser.
There's a lot of good marketing. That's the beer marketing in NASCAR works the best. You go back and talking about sponsors. Like, I have come so close to drinking Busch Light. I haven't done that since I was in college. That stuff sucks.
Or before.
You just look at that Harvick card. It's like, oh, wow. That looks good.
I'm with you on Keselowski, though. I think Keselowski is the most intelligent driver on the series. And I think that is part of why he's so hateable. Because guys who are smart, I think a lot of times are dislikable. If you're really dumb, you don't really. There's nothing to dislike. I mean, how are you going to dislike a guy who's like a rock?
Yeah.
But he says a lot of things that a lot of people don't like. He says about NASCAR, about other drivers, but they're insightful. He gives really great insight. And when you talk to him, there are some drivers that we've talked about a lot that you're just going to get. Number 2 Miller Lite was really great this week. We got a great engine from Roush Gary's Engines, and you're like, whereas he'll talk. He really broke down, along with Dale Jr. by the way, broke down before that race and between the All-Star race and the 600 about the issues with Charlotte Motor Speedway and how they had to fix them. And the guy knows what he's talking about. He mentioned learning new things. I learned something new about the sport, about what it is like to be a driver every time he talks. But when he gets out on that racetrack, he's a hateable guy.
Yeah.
If you're not a Penske guy.
We probably should have gone over our notes beforehand.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't really have another one either. Like, that's the thing. It's pretty black and white for me.
Yeah, whatever. 3 wide. Sometimes you collide.
Yeah.
All right.
Fine.
So, in honor of Austin Dillon winning in the 3.
Yeah.
What was the first number that you found it weird to see someone else drive?
For me, it was number 6.
Yep.
I grew up, and this is partially because I grew up in elementary school. This is a story time with Mike. I had a pencil box, Mark Martin pencil box, which is weird because I wasn't really into NASCAR. My mother just loves bargains. I think she probably found it at the dollar store for
Building 19 or something.
Yeah, so I had my pencils and erasers and a Mark Martin number 6 Valvoline box. So that was like, again, going back to talking about sponsorships and in the aesthetics of it. Like, that's kind of where I was like, ooh, what is this? This is a car that looks cool. Like, and it got me it. And then so that was just always synonymous. And I mean, I guess I'm kind of cheating. It really wasn't even when Martin came out of the car. It's when he started driving the Viagra car. Then I really got unsettled. But no, that's one where I'm.
How does your mom talk to you?
Yeah, that was. Believe it or not, that was not. I don't think they were making pencil boxes with Mark Martin's number 6 Viagra car.
The blue pills.
That was a different kind of box, probably. But yeah. So. That was one. Yeah, that's one for me. I see the 6 on the on the track, and I think of Martin before I think of anybody else.
Yep.
I thought the Darlington throwback last year was really cool. That made me feel like a kid again. So.
Yep. Yeah. No, agreed. 6 is number 1 for me. A couple other ones that 18. Bobby Labonte wasn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good one.
That was one. And more recent one was Matt Kenseth. He drove the 17 for so long, and then when he started driving the 20, it was weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it was not only this combination of there was someone else in the 17, but he was in Tony Stewart's car or number more.
Well, that was weird too because then Stewart went to the 14, and now it's just a whole lot of confusion.
It was very strange because both those guys had obviously been in those cars for a long time. Yeah. All right, this third question, Andre, hit us.
What's up, guys?
Hi.
You guys are doing great.
Thank you.
So my question to you, gentlemen, is NASCAR's in Delaware this weekend. So, what is your favorite Delaware attraction?
Googling Delaware attractions. The racetrack?
Well, I mean, as someone who lived in Philadelphia for a while, I actually went to Delaware several times. I like Delaware. Delaware is beautiful.
Doesn't Delaware have a minor league baseball team?
They do. The Blue Rocks with an amazing hat and logo. Yeah.
That's a tough question. I think I'm going to go with the Delaware Seashore State Park, though.
Did you just Google that?
Yeah. Because I thought it said seahorse at first. And I thought that was really cool, but it actually says seashore, so that's kind of a letdown.
Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, yeah.
That's not an attraction.
That's my favorite Delaware attraction.
That's not a Delaware
I don't
attraction.
think you know what attraction means.
Yeah,
unless you are smitten.
I used to play pickup basketball at the court that's right outside where Joe Flacco went to college. Went to high school in South Jersey. So that's a fun fact. Yeah.
So I guess that's your Delaware attraction?
Yes.
It's in South Jersey.
Yeah, the Audubon High School basketball court.
If that wasn't the first day, it'd be very forgettable.
Andre, what were you expecting us to do with that question?
That was a bad question.
That was like my that was what I began this show with give me a thought on sponsors. That wasn't the greatest setup in the world, but that's okay. That's fine.
Now we know where the thumbs down are coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Probably from me giving Andre a thumbs down.
Yeah.
Just joking. All right. Any final thoughts before I wave the checkered flag on this?
I have zero.
Yeah, me either. So yeah, we got Delaware this weekend. We'll be back to talk to you about what will happen at it. Probably. See ya.